Hello everyone, how are y'all doing today? I'm feeling pretty great myself. This weekend, the weekend of June 11th, I got to play in a cEDH tournament in Bellingham, Washington called Take the Tower at Dark Tower Games. This was a 44-person event with 4 rounds of Swiss and a cut to the top 4. Today I want to go into what my pods were and how I ended up getting into the top 4 of the tournament.
Isn't this just kind of stealing comedian MTG's content?
Yep, let's do it. So round 1, the turn order was me on Captain Sisay, a Kenrith deck that looked like Kenrith Evolution or Kenrith Midrange, Urza Power Scepter, and a Timnacron Blue Farm. Early in the game, I cast a Thalia Guardian of Thraben to slow down the other players, and Urza cast Back to Basics. I got pretty lucky that I drew a Quirion Ranger and could return my Savannah to hand to untap Sisay or my Llanowar Elves for extra mana. Otherwise, I would have tutored for Boseiju, who endures to unlock my Gaia's Cradle that I played on turn 3. But I felt decently comfortable with my position under the Back to Basics with the guaranteed land drop every turn and 2 Sisay activations. Eventually, Kenrith cast a Dockside Extortionist that made 9 treasures. We figured we were fine, because he didn't have enough treasure to cast Kenrith and activate his ability to put a ++1 counter on his Phantasmal image, and then also spend the mana to reanimate it. Then he cast Emil the Blessed. Emil plus Dockside that makes at least 4 treasures makes infinite treasures, which means infinite mana. Now, I had a Chord of Calling in my hand, so I could chord for Collector Oof, but he just activated a Wishclaw Talisman, which I figured meant he either went for the second half of the combo or he went for some form of protection for the combo. I figured it would be a good idea to get Urza to use their Aether Spellbomb to bounce Kenrith's Bloom Tender to cut him off an extra white mana before Emil resolved. That meant he'd only have 8 mana instead of 9 and could only threaten 2 Emil activations instead of 3. We let Emil resolve and activate targeting Dockside, and that's when the blue farm player went to remove Dockside in response. Predictably, Kenrith then activated Emil again, targeting Dockside Extortionist, and the other 2 players passed priority. Now he went to blink his Dockside and I had to tell him, wait, hold on, I have priority right now, and I have a response. I'm going to cast Chord of Calling for X equals 2. The table all collectively passed priority on it, and I got Collector Oof to shut off the combo. At this point, the player lamented about how he needed 1 more mana and he was going to be able to go off. On the next rotation of the table, I cast a Grand Abolisher, and I was then able to tap my Magus of the Candelabra that I played on the previous turn to untap my Gaia's Cradle. I activated Sisay to go find Ashia's Soul of the Wild, play Ashia, and activate Quirion Ranger to untap the Magus. And then I made infinite mana with the Magus of the Candelabra, Gaia's Cradle, and Ashia's Soul of the Wild. From there, I untapped Sisay and found Kamal Fist of Krosa, infinitely pumped my team, and attacked each player for infinite trample damage. Round 1 was a win for Sisay. Round 2, turn order had Wernog Elmar, or Will Max if you're going off the Stranger Things Secret Lair versions, me on Captain Sisay, Najeela Tempo, and the Gitrog monster. I had a hand that cast a turn 2 Sisay with a turn 3 Rest in Peace and Hope Tender, and threatened a win on turn 4. I got a little lucky in that I drew a Grand Abolisher on turn 3, so when I went for the win on turn 4, I led with the Grand Abolisher. In response, Najeela cast an Eladamri's Call, Gitrog cast Chord of Calling for X equals 3, I activated Sisay, Wernog Elmar cast a Slaughter Pact targeting Sisay, and Najeela cast a Force of Will targeting the Chord of Calling for X equals 3. That's 6 things on the stack at once, in a pod that only has a single blue deck. We resolved the stack, Chord got countered, Sisay got killed, I tutored for Ashia to hand, Najeela tutored for Ignoble Hierarch and put it to hand, because they were really, really stuck on lands. And then my Grand Abolisher finally resolved. Under the protection of Grand Abolisher, I cast Ashia and made infinite green and white mana, untapping every land and creature I had using the Hope Tender, but I didn't have the win from it just yet. I did, however, have a Horizon Canopy, and so I figured I would give myself the extra draw in order to find something that would be able to win me the game, and I had a lot of options. Anything that could put a creature to my hand or to the battlefield, like Finale of Devastation, Chord of Calling, my own Eladamri's Call, or Vivian Monster's Advocate, were all available things that could give me the win. Also, anything that granted haste, like Concordant Crossroads, Lightning Greaves, Thousand Year Elixir, or Destiny Spinner with the Ashaya in play, also would guarantee me a win. Or anything that was an infinite mana outlet on its own, like Kamal Fist of Krosa or Shalai Voice of Plenty. With all those options, I drew my card, and it was a Marsh Flats. So I just recast Sisay and cast the Linvala Keeper of Silence that was the last card in my hand other than the Marsh Flats that I just drew. With that, I just passed my turn. Najeela spent their turn abrupt decaying my Hope Tender. Then on Gitrog's next turn, they cast a Green Sun Zenith for Grist the Hunger Tide and used it to kill my Ashaya. Then Wernog Elmar paid for their Slaughter Pact to avoid losing the game. On my next turn, I tutored for and cast Emil the Blessed to attempt a win the following turn, but I also said I just don't want everybody to kill my stuff, so I went for protection to keep my stuff in play. No player took significant game actions that turn cycle, and when it came to my turn, I had a protected win attempt with Emil the Blessed, Gaia's Cradle, and Kamal Fist of Krosa. I knew all I had to do was dodge Boseiju Who Endures, destroying my Gaia's Cradle, and they didn't have it, so I was able to attack with infinitely large trample creatures and win the game yet again. Round 2 was also a win for Sisay. Round 3, turn order was myself, Inala Archmage Ritualist, Magda Brazen Outlaw, and Prosper Tomebound. My opening hands were risky, and I ended up having to mulligan my opening hand down to 5 cards. The 5 cards I kept were a Brushland, a Wild Growth, Voyaging Satyr, Thousand Year Elixir, and Yisan the Wanderer Bard. Inala and Magda both mulliganed to 5 cards as well, with Prosper keeping their second hand of 7 cards. I think my biggest mistake in this game was casting Yisan on turn 3 instead of Sisay. Turn 4, I played Thousand Year Elixir and wanted to verse Yisan to 1 to win the next turn, but what I should have done instead was cast Sisay turn 3 so I could tutor for Yasharn Implaceable Earth turn 4. And Yasharn stops the primary lines and value engines for all 3 of the other decks, including the sacrifice lines with Spellseeker in Inala, Magda sacrificing the treasures, and Prosper sacrificing the treasures that he makes off of his ability. But I got a little short-sighted and a bit tunnel-visioned, and I just wanted to threaten to win a turn faster, and because of that, I didn't have any interaction for the rest of the table. Turn 4, Inala started a Spellseeker line, but Magda had a deflecting swat to stop their reanimate, and had them instead reanimate my Quirion Ranger that was mental misstepped. Magda then found an artifact dwarf with 5 treasures, and proceeded to win the game. Prosper kept a hand that had no tutors or interaction, which surprised me, but it meant they didn't contribute to the outcome of the game significantly. Altogether, I made a mistake, and I just tried to clear my head before round 4, so I lost round 3. Round 4, turn order was Prosper, a different Prosper player, my friend Adam playing Timna Crom Blue Farm, myself on Sisay, and another player on Blue Farm. Prosper had an impressive turn 1 that played Prosper with a lot of mana ramp in one turn. Blue Farm player number 1 played a Scalding Tarn and passed turn. I also had an impressive turn 1 with a Finthorn Elves, a Mana Crypt, Lightning Greaves, and a Jiraga Tree Speaker all on turn 1. Blue Farm player number 2 played a land and a Mox Diamond and just passed turn. Prosper didn't do much on his next turn and passed. On his end step, Blue Farm player number 1 played an Enlightened Tutor for Mana Crypt. On his turn, he played a land, cast Mana Crypt into Arcane Signet, and cast Demonic Tutor. On my turn, I played a Carpet of Flowers. I used the mana from it to level up Jiraga Tree Speaker and cast Sisay. I equipped Sisay with Lightning Greaves and tutored for a Ganjo Castle. I had a Silence in my hand that I could use to interact with the table, and I wanted to be able to hold that up. On my end step, Blue Farm player number 2 cast a Limdol's Vault, and he paid only 1 life to dig 5 cards further. On his turn, he played a Mana Crypt and a Necropotence, and then paid 12 life to Necropotence. He got his cards, discarded a hand size, and passed turn. Prosper played a Mayhem Devil, which concerned the whole table. Blue Farm cast an Underworld Breach on his next turn. Collectively, we all passed priority on it, and then he cast Grinding Station, which threatened to win the game. With Station on the stack, I passed priority, even though I had the Silence in hand, because I knew Prosper had an Emergence Zone with lots of open mana, and I wanted to get him to contribute more resources to the stack before I cast the Silence. Sure enough, he sacrificed a Merchant Zone and cast Jeska's Will. The blue farm player cast a miscast targeting Jeska's Will. Prosper cast a Rite of Flame to then pay for miscast. And then with Jeska's Will and Grinding Station on the stack, I cast the Silence. In my turn 3, I had a number of potential top decks to threaten a win, but I didn't find any of them. What I should have done here was I should have tutored for Yasharn to stop the Necropotence, as well as the Prosper and the Grinding Station. But instead, I got tunnel visioned again by the notion of winning a turn earlier, and I tutored for Vivian Monsters Advocate to try and set up a line with Vivian and a Quirion Ranger. My opponents saw alarm bells ringing, and I noticed that with the amount of treasures and the Grinding Station in play, I couldn't even try to win anyway because they could kill my combo pieces by banding together and sacrificing permanents to the Mayhem Devil. Having made a pretty severe mistake, I passed my turn. Blue farm player number 2 played a land, cast a Rhystic Study, and paid 14 more life to Necropotence. He passed and discarded down to hand size. Prosper took no significant game actions on his next turn and passed. Blue farm player number 1 played a Crom and then attacked my Vivian. Much to my dismay, as I considered blue farm player number 2 to be in a much more dangerous position than I was, having paid 26 life to Necropotence to sculpt a win, while also having Rhystic Study in play. Blue farm player number 2 cast a Chain of Vapor targeting my Beast token with Reach before blockers were declared, and I decided not to copy the Chain, though in hindsight, I should have copied it and had my copy of Chain of Vapor targeting the Crom that was attacking my Vivian. Still, before blockers were declared, I cast an Aven Mind Sensor in the hopes I could block and still use my Vivian on my next turn to find more stacks pieces to cement myself in a better position than where I currently was given my mistake the previous turn. The Prosper sacrificed a treasure to kill the Aven Mind Sensor, and then Crom killed my Vivian. On my turn, I decided to take the line of play I should have taken the previous turn, and tutored for Yasharn, especially because blue farm player number 2 cast an Enlightened Tutor for Lion's Eye Diamond in response to my Aven Mind Sensor. But alas, I made yet another mistake. I cast a Mother of Runes before I cast Yasharn in place Bloodwrath. They conspired to kill my mother with a Mayhem Devil trigger before Yasharn resolved. I should have played Yasharn and then locked out the ability to sacrifice permanents, period, and then also played the Mother of Runes to protect Yasharn rather than the other order. That way I could equip her with Lightning Greaves and been able to use her ability to protect Yasharn and keep him in play from the Chain of Vapor that we figured was inevitably going to be cast targeting Yasharn because Chain of Vapor had already been cast and blue farm player number 2 telegraphed that they were going for an Underworld Breach line. All out of options, I equipped Yasharn with the Lightning Greaves and attacked blue farm player number 2 to put his life total more in danger with the Mayhem Devil after Yasharn would inevitably be answered. With that, I passed turn. Blue farm player number 2 managed to bounce Lightning Greaves, Yasharn, and the Mayhem Devil with Chain of Vapor, with the rest of the table having made one too many mistakes by not copying the Chain to deal the last point of damage we needed to kill him before Chain bounced the Mayhem Devil. From there, blue farm player number 2 went on to win, and I needed to get lucky on my tiebreakers to make the cut for top 4. So round 4 was also a loss. After a long period of discussion while the TOs were working out placements and records and tiebreakers and all of that stuff, eventually I just hear my name get called out. I answered and they said, "Congratulations!" And I was a little confused. I said, "What for?" Then they announced the top 4 placements, with the blue farm player that I played in the last round that won, the Prosper from my round 3, the Wernog and Elmer player that was in my round 2, and finally, I had the best tiebreakers of anybody on a 2-2 record and got to squeak into the top 4 at 4th place. Our turn order was arranged as such, and with that, we went into the game. Top 4, since I was last in turn order and needed a fast hand to contribute to the game quickly, I ended up mulliganing my hand down to 5 cards again. The 5 that I ended up keeping was able to cast a turn 2 cEDH in the hopes of playing a turn 3 Yasharn. Blue farm was first, and we all had pretty decent starts. Prosper had a turn 1 Prosper, Wernog Elmer cast a turn 1 Destiny Spinner off of a Chrome Mox, I cast a turn 1 Avacyn's Pilgrim, and blue farm cast a turn 2 Timna. Prosper played a Sensei's Divining Top. Wernog Elmer did something, I don't remember what. And on my turn, I cast Enlightened Tutor for Mana Crypt in my upkeep, played Mana Crypt and my land, and cast Sisay. Turn 3, Blue Farm hit me with Timna and drew a card, then cast Dockside, Extortionist, and made 6 treasures. With that, none of us had any form of interaction for it, so he sacrificed some of his treasures and cast an Ad Nauseam. In a pod without blue spells to fight him, we all collectively passed priority. Then he found a Demonic Consultation and a Pact of Negation and decided to stop there, adding only 6 cards to his hand. From there, he cast Thassa's Oracle and Demonic Consultation and won the game. Altogether, this tournament was a blast to play in. It was so much fun to interact with everyone from the community in person and play some really great games. For example, the Blue Farm player in my round 1 was actually somebody that I played in round 1 of Marchesa 2022 a few months ago. My friend Nicholas, better known as Joking 101, a big tournament organizer for the cEDH scene, was also there, and I got to hang out with him between the rounds. I met new people, hung out with friends, and made new friends, and just really enjoyed a day full of playing Magic. Out of the 5 games that I played that day, I won 2 of them and made the top 4, which made me pretty happy with that result. The top 4 consisted of 1 really well-known deck, but the other 3 were all super unique decks to see at a top table. It was a great tournament, and I was so happy I decided to go. Also, Blue Farm finally won a tournament.
Well, you know, this event isn't really that big compared to stuff like Marchesa or Tier 1 Con. Does it really count?
Yes, this tournament wasn't as large as others, but the victor played his deck really well. And a win is a win, and he totally deserved it. This tournament reminded me a lot of the DDM gaming tournament that happened in February of 2020. This tournament happened right before COVID-19 shut down a lot of local game stores running events, and the event also made history in a couple different ways. First of all, the tournament had 62 entrants, which at that point was the largest number of players for an in-person competitive EDH event ever. But in addition to it, people also brought a lot of their own pet decks to the tournament, and we saw things like Tatiova Benthic Druid that ended up winning, with a top 4 of Tatiova, Yisan the Wanderer Bard, Una Queen of the Fae, and the first top 4 placement that Michael Levine would get with Heliod Suncrown. Given the top 4 placements of this event, and a lot of the decks that I saw at that tournament, it just goes to show that what's most important isn't playing the best deck, it's being a good player. This event was a lot of fun, and exciting to make my first top 4 in something that's larger than just a local competitive EDH tournament. But in addition to being exciting and just a lot of fun to play in, it also taught me some really valuable lessons too. It taught me to take a step back and not get into my own head too much with results-oriented thinking. It taught me to understand my role at the table more effectively and play to the strengths of my deck and my strengths as a player. All the games I won in the Swiss rounds, I did so by having my primary focus be playing some form of stacks piece to stop the fastest player at the table, and then pivot myself into a win. All of my losses from the Swiss rounds I earned from trying to race the table to assembling some form of combo, instead of putting up obstacles that more effectively slowed down my competition. I really value the experience, and I hope I can take these lessons and apply them in my next cEDH event. That is all from me for this video. If you like the content of this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.